Well, there are lots of different main issues that we face in married life. Um, sex, family, children, and then we've got that nasty old topic of money that can happen in our marriages that a lot of people fight about. And so, Bill Nelson is joining me as a certified financial planner and a certified financial therapist, which is one I've never heard of before. And so we were talking just prior to, which you're saying it just has blended the mental health field and the money field with a little bit of a different uniqueness, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think about a decade ago, a group of financial planners and people in the mental health space got together and realized that, financial planners are not really good about talking with people about the emotional side of money. And mental health practitioners are often not very comfortable talking about money with people because, let's face it, very few people are comfortable
Right.
talking about money.
Right.
So a group of people got together and, created some curriculums and things to help people in both fields navigate those conversations in a way.
And that's so vital because I had the phrase, Bill, that we don't fight about things, we fight about the meanings attached to things. And if you talk about something that is loaded with meaning, it's money.
You better
Right?
believe it. That's right.
so since you've been doing this as your profession for a while now, what are some of the main things you come across that just regularly trips up couples, trips up people in marriage, even those that are further into it? Because it seems like this is something, I mean, Pam and I are 30 years in and we can still have, I mean, even just last night we had hey, we need to talk about this aspect of how money is leaving our home versus coming in our home. There's still this tension that can come about it. So what do you keep seeing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a few different things, right? Oftentimes when we think about money fights in marriage, the stereotypical one that everybody brings up is actually what I think you just were alluding to, which is spending versus saving fights, right? There is a growing body of research out there that shows that we tend to attract our financial opposites. So, I mean, first and foremost, if you are fighting about money in that way, the first thing to know is it's really normal, right? More people fight about saving and spending decisions than don't fight about it. But the thing is, like, oftentimes the more I have conversations with couples about money, the more I find that there's different types of money fights that can blend in, right? That come from different sources, right? Oftentimes one member of the couple is much more inclined to be hands-on with the money and want to manage everything and move the money around. And sometimes they're really good about looping their spouse in with what's going on, and sometimes they're not so good about it. One of the most common ones that I see that I think is the least understood with the conversations that I've had has to do with differences between valuing financial security versus financial freedom, right? How much risk do you feel comfortable taking, right? If you save $500 this month, right, what do you want to do with it, right? Oftentimes one person likes that feeling of security of either paying down debt or having the extra $500 sitting in their bank account where it's sitting nice and safe, earning a little bit of interest. And oftentimes the other spouse might want to wheel and deal with it a little bit, right? Put it into the market, try to make it grow. And that tension, I find is more and more, the more I look for those types of differences among couples, the more common I'm finding them to be.
Okay. And that's interesting because I think even within those degrees, if you will, aren't there probably variances in those degrees even more in the sense of, because if you wrap up or sum up Pam and I's journey, we would fit that category likely of it has meant security for her, but it's not necessarily just immediate security. It's also long-term because we were, being Gen Xers, we're raised in that whole, you can't count on Social Security. You better make it on your own, set up your own scenario, self-sufficiency, whatever it might be. And so she's had that thought process, I think, as an arc to the entirety of our marriage. I've had the thought process of money is a means to go do and get things. Actually reverse that, to get things and do things, because I will absolutely go get things. I mean, I'm shiny guy. So there's this tension that plays out, and what we've noticed is even as we are aligning better, there's still an element of nuance within those categories we still fight that come up.
Absolutely. Right. Because with all of those types of differences, right, that we're talking about, it's not that one person is right or wrong. It's that you need both of all of these things. But the question is, how, in what order, what are we focusing on right now versus what are we focusing on later on down the road, right? Spoiler alert, you need to be spending some money over the course of your life, and you also need to be saving some money, right? Both people are right. And I find that oftentimes, right, couples will be inclined to gravitate toward one extreme or the other, right, unless they have some sort of process in place for putting some boundaries around those things. But yeah, it's a very common problem to have with all of those different areas, right? From the security standpoint, like, you need to have some money in the bank account before you start doing a lot of investing, right? If you're investing without some sort of financial foundation built for your family, the second something goes wrong, everything's going to come crumbling down like a house of cards.
Right.
But at the same time, I often am talking people into doing more investing who have seen some bad things in the stock market happen in the past. And the reality is, right, if you're younger than, let's say, 60, the biggest financial risk from my perspective that you're going to face in your lifetime has nothing to do with the stock market. It's inflation, right? How much more expensive stuff is going to be 40 years from now. And
right.
The reality is that without some investing component, right, you're not going to have a way to deal with that.
Right. Unless you just continue working and
Correct.
have something that's continually growing as far as the income that you're
Correct.
making. And that's what's going to keep you above the curve, if you will.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. And so you alluded to this idea of having the conversations and having some boundaries surrounding it, because what is it that makes it so difficult for a couple then when we are trying to get into meanings that I can easily take the stance of, but my meaning is right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think without some sort of North Star, so to speak, to guide your financial decision making, it can be really hard to get out of that perspective. And so I often encourage couples to think about money conversations like they're behind the wheel of a car. If you spend too much time looking backwards in the rearview mirror while you're driving your car on the road ahead, that's how problems happen, right? And oftentimes money fights are grounded in either what's happened in the past and where we've come from and differences with how we were raised and things like that. And likewise, if you spend too much time looking inside the car at the dashboard and the passenger seat, right, that's also how bad things happen. What we want to be doing is it's important to look at the dashboard of a car, right? There's important information there. You should be looking at it from time to time. The rearview mirror is in the car for a reason, right? You want to be looking backwards periodically as you're driving. But most of your time should be spent looking at the road ahead, right? Where do we want your money to take you down the road? Because oftentimes when I have conversations with couples, the vision for what we want our money to do for us in the long run usually is either the same or very similar.
Right.
But it's when we back that into what the credit card looks like today and what the bank account balance looks like today, it's when we kind of move from where we want our money to take us to where we are today that problems can pop up.
And is that because a lot of times we can get caught up in the scenario of, we have the same vision, but the culmination of that vision is 20, 30, 40 years away. So the $500 I want to spend right now, when that's still way off in the distance, isn't as consequential in my mind as it may be theirs, because but that exponentially, if we put that $500 to work for us right now, exponentially it becomes, $10,000 in 40 years or whatever. And it's all those things that get so tricky because we get caught in all the different aspects of your car, like you're describing, and just focus on one too much.
Yeah, I think it's definitely partly that. Delayed gratification in the financial planning world is a reality sometimes, unfortunately, and that can be hard to inspire people to take immediate action today. But oftentimes it just has to do with our money backgrounds and money values as well, right?
Okay.
If two people have come together and they're envisioning living their lives together, right? Oftentimes that future vision is similar, right? That's what brought them together in the first place, or at the very least, that's what kept them together going forward. But most of the time, our money backgrounds are very different. And so as a result, the way that we view money often is really different from the way our spouse views money. To give you a kind of extreme example of this, a few years ago, I was working with a couple who, they were good matches for each other. They wanted the same things, like they had a good marriage, but The husband grew up in a country that I'm not gonna name the specific country,
Yeah.
but a country that very famously experienced hyperinflation right after the Cold War.
Okay.
When he was growing up, he was about 30 years old, and in the present day, he was the one managing all the bank accounts, and it was driving the wife nuts because he wouldn't leave any money in the checking account. Literally, like the paycheck would come in and he had no problem spending a bunch of money, right? It wasn't that he was just saving everything,
right?
But anything that wasn't saved immediately went and was invested elsewhere, right? Bare bones emergency fund, no cash on hand. And they were overdrafting their checking account,
right?
Not because they didn't have the money, but because
they're playing the game with it a different way, because that's what he always had to do to keep it hidden or not, so it's not accessible from other forces.
Exactly. Yeah. And in kind of going through the conversation with him, what we realized was, when he was growing up, watching his parents make financial decisions in a hyperinflationary environment, money that sat in the bank account today was worthless a month from now, right? Because stuff was just so much more expensive. And so what he internalized from that was, if I have money today, I'm going to spend it today. Like I'm not going to be afraid to spend a bunch of money because we don't know what stuff is going to cost tomorrow. And anything that's not saved needs to be invested. And now, was that a right or wrong perspective? I mean, we had some conversations about what we can expect the U.S. economy to look like, and being that extreme with the way that we're managing our money might not be necessary in today's world. But at the very least, having that conversation helped the wife understand where he was coming from, right? It wasn't that he was
the foundation of the story, right? It's not like it's justifying it, but it is a good reason.
Exactly. And so once we kind of got to the understanding of how their views on money, like where they came from and how they're manifesting today, then we were able to kind of help them navigate those things.
Okay. Because again, this is just one of those things that I just hear. One of my professors in grad school did a little segment on this subject, and he made a comment that one of the things he would tell his clients to go do, I'm curious your thought of this, Bill, is
great. I'm ready.
Go home and get some cash, get some, not a substantial amount, but whatever cash you may have on hand, that it's actually more than just like $5 or, and fan it out like a deck of cards in your hand and have a conversation with it. Like actually talk to the money, because it was trying to recognize there's more to it than just the actual bill or the paper, or, because it's a whole lot more involved. And it's, I think he's pointing at some of what you're describing is this is the meanings and the story that we attach to this item as it pertains to our life. Cause it is an inevitability. We have to have it. It is a part of life. Every civilization has some sort of currency of something where we put value on it. But what we don't realize is it's more than just whatever the denoted value is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm definitely going to try that exercise. So I'll report back on how that goes. Okay. But if you don't want to go to the bank and take out a big wad of bills to start talking to it, what I challenge you to do instead is, because I'm totally going to do that, but I understand why some people might not. Why is money important to you? Right. Ask yourself that question. And if you if you pause the episode and answer it and then tune back in, 98% of the time when I ask a couple, why is money important to you, to get back to what we were talking about before, one person will say freedom and one person will say security, or a synonym for those words. And those words are meaningless. I want to know more than that. Like what does freedom mean to you? Right. If we could snap our fingers and deliver all the freedom you needed today, right? What would that look like? How would things change? What would you do? And go deeper and deeper and deeper like that. And that when, you'll know when you get to the point where you're ready to stop poking and kind of going further down the rabbit hole, when you get to a kind of a pretty powerful statement that, we go from money to this bigger, deeper thing.
Right. Because then you're talking about, because this is what, you familiar with the book Psychology of Money?
I am. Yes.
Yeah, that's a fantastic read. If anybody's listening in the nation hasn't read it, that would be the one I recommend most as a therapist when money comes up as part of the process.
Yeah, it's a great book.
One of the ones to start with is there, and then get with people that live in that world more, like yourself. But I loved his definition when you're talking about wealth versus rich, because even those terms have differing
100%. Yeah.
values. And Pam and I have adopted that the mindset of wealth, meaning we can do what's the phrase? We can do whatever we want as long as we want, as often as we want, or whatever it might
Love
be.
it.
Where it's
Love
because
it.
it's not like this whole we have to hit X number of millions of dollars. Instead, it's
Hmm.
like, wait, what's our lifestyle? Because that's where it comes into so many different factors,
Hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
even if you think about the stuff I heard the other day of if you make over $54,000 a year worldwide, you are in the top 1%,
Yeah.
which, okay, that can be leveraged in all kinds of political ways, whatever kind of stance you want to take, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever agenda you've got, you
Hmm.
can use that stat because it doesn't factor what's the cost of living, what's inflation,
Correct.
what's
Context is
everything
everything.
else.
Yes. That
Yeah,
is exactly right.
situation matters in
Hmm.
that. And so
Yeah.
if you can recognize I think that's what you're getting at. And that's the role you play a lot is how do you help people navigate through what you're really fighting about isn't what you think you're fighting about.
Yeah. Money is a vehicle in which fights manifest that are about something deeper.
Right.
Or about something that you're missing, right? It's very rarely just about the money.
Well, and that's the same kind of concept that with the 12 years we've been doing this show on the whole concept of sex. It's the same thing. You're not fighting about the act of sex as often as you might think you are. You're fighting about something a lot deeper.
Agreed.
Okay. So are there some things, I'm just curious, because this is one of the stuff that Pam comes across. Are there some things you get out there in the social media world that are just myths? The TikTok tax advice is what Pam calls it. So what's the TikTok financial planning advice that you get clients come in and say, hey, Bill, we want to do this. And you're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to have trained my clients to stay off TikTok for financial advice, which has worked very well for me. There are a few things though that have come up in recent years. The life insurance space in particular is filled with all sorts of gimmicky ways that people position life insurance products in a way that makes them sound like things that they're not, which are life insurance products, right? The goal of life insurance is to not use it.
Right.
The life insurance is something that you want to have and many people need to have, but you don't want to use.
Right.
So if you find yourself being pitched or talking about life insurance in a way that it's going to do all these magical things and generate tax-free income for you, and I mean, odds are you're paying 10 to 20 times more for life insurance than you actually need to, and you are trying to use something that should not be used unless there is a emergency.
Right. Yeah. It is so interesting because you have to realize, this is one of those things where everybody's got an agenda and some of them aren't helpful and clean and good.
100%. The financial planning world has a very well-earned reputation for being kind of in the same ballpark as Congress and used car salesmen in terms of favorability ratings out there.
That's not good company.
It's not good company, and it's no small reason why I decided to go out on my own back in the day. Is because I started in the industry at a major company and stayed there long enough to know that I liked working with these kinds of questions, but wanted to do it my own way. So.
Oh no, I totally get it. I mean, that's that whole idea because this is the same kind of thing where we have a lot of an overlap when you can really get in close with people and you see the impact. That's that second paycheck. That's what Pam, that's the phrase she uses too. If you're really helping somebody for the long run, and then also generationally, when you give somebody some peace of mind, some hope, a strategy, a plan, somebody that helps weather a storm, all of that, knowing I'm not alone when the stock market takes the inevitable correction or some gamble I had didn't pay off.
Yeah.
I mean, I got heavy into crypto. I'll own it. And it was horrible. And now it's like, yep. But Pam wasn't totally after me on that. She's like, okay, really wish it would have gone differently, but okay.
You know what the interesting thing about crypto is? If I was to map out the past 6 or 7 years and put on a timeline, so to speak, right, and put an X on the timeline whenever anybody asked me about investing in crypto, and left a blank space where I wasn't having those conversations, and you put the graph of Bitcoin's price on top of that, nobody asked me about Bitcoin when it's doing terribly. right? Everybody asks me about it when it's at the top of the kind of most recent valuation of it. And we know from an investing standpoint, the goal is to buy things when they're
Right.
low
It's the worst time
and
to get
sell things
in.
when they're high. Exactly.
Yeah.
And yet the way that, I mean, I don't know, I'm not going to blame this all on TikTok, but really just the financial media in general, right? The way that we talk about making investing decisions, right? We're not looking at what has a good long-term potential, but maybe hasn't done so lately. We're looking at what the hot thing is today. And the
Right.
reality is by the time you get in the hot thing that we're dealing with today, sometimes, not always, but
Right. But you
sometimes it's too
probably
late.
missed it at that point.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
That's
Because,
right.
yeah, the people that caught it early on, fantastic for them.
Mhm.
But man, that's the same thing with the people that caught Amazon early on or Tesla early on, whatever it might have been. It's like, yeah, I don't see it. But some people did, and they got a payoff for that.
Yeah, 100%. Right. There is a difference between taking investing risk and speculating.
Right. That's a
And
good distinction. That's a good distinction.
there is nothing wrong with doing a little speculating as long as you're in a position to do so and you understand that it's speculating.
And it's also one of those, like you're describing, it has a bigger meaning involved rather than it's the get rich quick
Bingo.
that we all can fall victim to so easily, that this will satisfy all my ills, right?
Yeah.
If I can just attain this, that'll solve it.
Yeah. And sometimes, right, particularly for people who are really inclined to want to be hands-on and try to make some moves to make their money grow, right? I sometimes I find if we create a little sandbox and we put $1,000, $5,000 in it and say, okay,
Mhm.
like, wheel and deal in this account as much as you want. If it goes to zero, like if you completely mess up the strategy here, like it's not going to
Right.
make or break us, right? Oftentimes I find like if we kind of set that system
Yep.
up, then that person is much more likely to want to lean in and
Yeah.
make the rest of their money work toward those.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I
family
have
values.
friends that do the same kind of thing with casinos.
Yep.
Right. That's one of it's an evening of entertainment is the way they look at it. And they have
Yeah.
a set amount that they're
Bingo.
willing to risk. And once that's gone, it's gone. And if they make more than that, they pay them, they pull out what they
Great.
put in, and
Yep.
then they're just playing with house money, and it becomes an
Yeah,
enjoyable
100%.
entertainment.
And on the flip side, I do a lot of work with couples who are trying to figure out whether they should combine money, how much they should combine, things like that. And I had a case where a woman that I was meeting with had a best friend whose marriage failed. The husband drained the accounts and left with everything. And she said, look, I'm not comfortable combining everything, right? I am willing to combine most things, but I need to have my $20,000 separate savings account just in case. And if I have that, I'm willing to lean in and like combine everything else. And we said, okay, great. Like that is what you need to be able to like use the rest of your resources to work toward your family's goals in the context of their situation. That was a reasonable amount to set aside. And so we did it. And the end result was really good.
Yeah. And because that's talking about the deeper meanings here. That's talking
100%.
about what is it that helps me still hold on to the value I have ascribed to this particular aspect of my life. And then I can have some more freedom or comfort or whatever in the other areas where it's not in line completely with what I like, but I'm okay.
Yep. 100%.
Well, man, thank you so much for walking alongside couples with this, Bill. So how can people find you if they want a little bit more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not on TikTok as of today anyway. I am on Instagram. My company is Pacesetter Planning. So it's at Pacesetter Planning on Instagram, pacesetterplanning.com. I'm there as well. I published a book last year called Marriage Centered Money, Get on the Same Financial Page and Achieve Your Life Goals Together, which is it's marriage centered money because it's the exact opposite of money centered marriage is the way I like to think about that. And you can get that at marriagecenteredmoney.com as well.
Perfect. Well, man, thank you so much for we need people in the world that walk alongside people with these hot button trigger laden issues, and money is definitely one of them.
Yes, it is. And thank you for talking about all the stuff that you talk about on here as well. When I was writing my book, I came across a study that it was from, I think, somewhere in London that they surveyed 15,000 people and asked them to questions on the street about their details about their sex life and details about their salary. And they found that people were 7 times more likely to answer the questions about their sex life than their salary, which was mind-blowing to me. So,
Interesting.
but there's something about those two topics we haven't gotten
Yeah,
comfortable talking about in a productive way, I find. And
yeah,
so,
it is one of those things that's kind of historically been one of those secret things. It's this underground aspect of life that I can't bring it to the surface, but it's almost like when you do, there's a different level of freedom that comes along with it, I guess.
100%, completely agree. I mean, so much about the way we talk about money and marriage is in the negative, right? Money is one of the leading causes of arguments and things. But my whole premise of the work that I do is that it doesn't have to be that way, right? Right. If we flip it around and we learn how to manage money effectively together, how to talk about money effectively together, it can actually make your marriage stronger.
Yeah, because it's hopefully not going anywhere. So
that's right. That's
other
right.
than up in the long run, right?
That's right. That's right.
Well, Bill, thanks so much, man, and all the best on the work. All right.
Yeah, thanks for having me.